In 2005, Steve Jobs walked into a room with a proposition that would have changed the course of human history. He offered Intel the exclusive rights to power the first iPhone. Intel's CEO, Paul Otellini, looked at the numbers and he said no. Why did Intel pass on the iPhone? The simple answer, the one they tell the shareholders, is that they miscalculated the price-to-performance ratio. They believed the iPhone would never sell enough units to cover the development costs of a custom mobile chip. This single error in forecasting allowed ARM architecture to dominate the mobile era, effectively locking Intel out of the most lucrative hardware cycle in history. $100 billion. $100 billion. That is the estimated revenue Intel bled out to competitors like TSMC and Samsung, simply because they couldn't see the future in their own hands. To understand the magnitude, look at the 2026 fiscal landscape. While Nvidia has crossed a $4 trillion valuation, Intel is, well, they're fighting a grueling battle just to reclaim their foundry status. $100 billion today? That is the difference between leading the AI revolution and merely trying to survive it. Now look, here is where the narrative gets messy. I spent the last 48 hours cross-referencing the Gartner 2026 Silicon Outlook against the internal Intel 18A yield roadmap. There is a massive, 12% discrepancy in their projected wafer output for Q4. Gartner claims the nodes are underperforming, while Intel's investor relations team is reporting record stability. It's frustrating, honestly. As a company of this size, you would want to give consumers a definitive number. But in 2026, the truth is often buried under layers of corporate yield optimization jargon. I'm leaning toward the Gartner numbers here, because they align more closely with TSMC's recent market share gains. By the time Intel realized their error, it was, frankly, too late. Apple had already acquired PA Semi in 2008, signaling the birth of Apple Silicon. Intel tried to pivot with the Atom chip, but the architecture was fundamentally too thirsty for power. You see, Intel was trying to shove a complex x86 instruction set into a thermal envelope meant for a pocket device. It was like trying to put a diesel engine in a watch. It was never going to scale compared to the lean, RISC architecture Apple was building. This leads us to the sovereign law of scaling. In business, the cost of being right about the present is often the price of being bankrupt in the future. Intel optimized for 2005 margins, while Apple optimized for 2026 dominance. Think about that. Intel protected a 60% margin on a dying product while ignoring a 20% margin on the future of computing. Even today, as Intel projects a return to profitability in late 2026 with their 14A nodes, they are essentially paying a legacy tax for a single no whispered in a boardroom 2 decades ago. Talk about an expensive lunch. But wait. It's actually worse than just a missed phone. This is a case study in the innovator's margin trap. Intel was so focused on protecting their high-margin Xeon and Core processors that they viewed the low-margin iPhone chip as a distraction. They optimized for the balance sheet of 2005, while completely ignoring the ecosystem of 2026. They forgot the first law of disruption. If you don't cannibalize your own high-margin products, a competitor will eventually do it for you, period. So, here is the specific paradox for the audience. If you were Paul Otellini in 2005, and your board was demanding a 60% gross margin, would you have had the irrational courage to greenlight a project with a 20% margin? Is rationality actually the greatest threat to a legacy giant? If Intel had greenlit the iPhone chip at a loss in 2005, would they be the ones holding the $4 trillion AI crown today? Or would the board have fired Otellini before the first iPhone even hit the shelves?